I want to talk to you about a concept called microlearning and how and why you might want to consider building this into your practice. So I'm going to take you through the story of how this concept developed. So the story starts back in August 2020 with a wonderful group of women from across the globe who came together to learn more about Kata. And we're the Kata Girl Geeks. And our vision is that we're a global and ever expanding learning community of Kata Girl Geeks who have a positive impact on our world. Now that's a big statement, and it's one that drives us forward every single week. Now, the really important part of that vision is the words learning community. So our first challenge was all about learning and growing together. And we run a weekly meeting on Zoom every Monday using a digital storyboard on Mural. So our first target condition back in September 2020, and I've simplified this slightly, but these are the key parts of our desired operating pattern. So for new members, we wanted to offer them a virtual coffee session to find out about the group and how it worked. And we also wanted to offer them all a chance to attend a virtual Kata in the Classroom event. We also wanted to establish learning groups, pairs of learners and coaches to work together. We call them active learning groups. And we wanted them to self-assess themselves, their skill levels, using a Dreyfus scale assessment against the improvement Kata and the coaching Kata. And we wanted them to undertake daily coaching cycles. In terms of our weekly meeting, we wanted the whole group to be able to observe a live coaching cycle, and we wanted to have time for questions and feedback and discussion. And we also had various process and outcome metrics to do with the number of members, the number of coaching cycles, and so on. So our actual condition at the time, so we were having a live coaching cycle every week. I was acting as the learner for the group, and the awesome Julie Simmons was my coach. And we had 5 learning groups identified. So 5 learners and 5 coaches had all put their hands up, and they were committed to daily cycles. And each of them had assessed their current Kata skill level using the Dreyfus scale. But we had a problem. We hit an obstacle. So we didn't know how to measure learning and skill development on a week-to-week basis. We had the skill assessment, which would show us their growth from beginning to end, but we didn't know how to track their learning at a more granular level. So we did an experiment. So we asked each learner and each coach to document at least one micro-learning after every coaching cycle. And the word microlearning originally came from Dorsey Sherman. I don't know if Dorsey's here today, but shout out to Dorsey Sherman who came up with the word. And we define a microlearning as a tiny burst of new knowledge. And the word micro there is super important. We were setting the bar really low. This didn't need to be something world-changing or a huge revelation. Any new small burst of knowledge could be included here. It might relate to the steps of the improvement Kata. It might be something their coach or their learner said that struck a chord. It might be something to do with the relationship between them, the two. And we asked them to document these microlearnings on the mural, and we had a space for each week for each learner and each coach. So what did we expect? Well, we expected this would enable us to see if we were developing skills. We thought it would keep them accountable to the group. We thought it would encourage reflection on the coaching cycles. And perhaps most importantly, we thought that we'd be able to learn from each other. So what actually happened? Well, over the 3 months of that challenge, the learning groups recorded close to 500 micro-learnings. Some were tiny, some were larger, but we recorded over 500. I'm going to show you 3 or 4 of those now. So 1, following the Kata structure feels so liberating. It's amazing how an obstacle perceived might not actually be an obstacle. The process can feel bumpy when starting from scratch with a new learner. And a target isn't really a goal, it's a milestone. So you'll see some of these are bigger than others, and some things were kind of repeated but seen in a different perspective, but we started to see these incredible learnings coming to the surface. So we saw these micro-learnings grow more sophisticated over time. And at each meeting, we invited every learner and coach present to share their favorite micro-learning from the week. And we had really deep discussions and true insight into our members' skill development. We also saw a huge amount of energy and excitement develop in the group. People were excited to share their learnings, and the wider group were excited to hear about them. So what did we learn? Well, we learned that capturing the microlearnings forced a deep reflection, which it seemed became easier and more habitual over time. We also saw that members were far more aware of their learning, day to day and week to week. One described to me that she was able to now notice the subtle parts of the coaching conversation, and said that she was approaching the cycle with an intent to learn. We also saw a dramatic growth in skills and capabilities within the group. Now, at this time, I came across this quote which really resonated with what we were seeing. And this is a guy called John Dewey, a philosopher and psychologist with expertise in learning. And he said this in the early 1900s. He said that we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And this felt really relevant to what we were seeing. By following this intentful practice of reflection, we were truly learning. So I decided I should do an experiment. It was working for all these people, so I need to try this. So I decided to try recording and make microlearning after every coaching cycle that I was in, as a learner or as a coach. So what did I expect? Well, I thought this would be quite easy. I knew I was learning. I thought I'd be able to identify and document things easily. And I expected to see growth in my skills as we had with our learning groups. So what actually happened? Well, actually, it was really hard. It was really hard to remember to do it. I found myself leaving it until later and then having to try and remember what happened. And after the first few, it was quite hard to identify a learning. So I ran a few experiments and I found a way to make it work for me. So I added a prompt to my coaching record. So every single coaching session that I coach, I added this section down at the bottom for me to record a microlearning. And I made sure to take a couple of minutes at the end of every cycle to record my learnings. And then at the end of each week, I went through my records and transferred all of them into a Google spreadsheet. And I found that this double loop, where I went back over them at the end of the week, really enhanced the whole experience. I often found I was adding more detail or clarity to them, having reflected on them through the week. And it really quickly became a habit. I began to enjoy it, and I loved the chance to go back and see what I'd learned. And I loved the experience of adding them all to the spreadsheet and building up this document of my learning. And I had a real sense of achievement. So what did I learn? So I learned that planning a few minutes reflection after each cycle was really critical. Even 1 minute now is enough, coupled with that weekly review, and it works really well for me. I found my coaching went up a gear. I had 2 of my learners separately mention to me that something has changed. One approached me, and this is not a person who's from the CI or the Lean or the Kata background, but they're really passionate about self-improvement. And they said to me, what is it that you're doing? What are you doing differently? Have you moved into a new phase of coaching? I found this practice was affecting the way I asked the questions and also the way I responded to the answers. I was kind of tuned in to look for learning, and I could feel a difference within my head. And I was approaching each cycle differently. I was far more self-aware. And this wasn't just in coaching cycles, it was in meetings, in webinars, in other sessions I was with. I was constantly looking for the learning. So just a couple of months ago, I saw another quote that really resonated with me. And this is from Seth Godin. I'm sure most of you might know him, an awesome author, expert on marketing and leadership. And he wrote this in his blog. He said that when we adopt the posture of commitment, something extraordinary happens. The lessons get more profound and useful. The questions get more specific and urgent. And the connections that are made get deeper. And I believe this is about taking something seriously, developing a process, committing yourself to doing something. And to me, intentionally and deliberately practicing the habit of reflection by identifying and recording microlearnings is a posture of commitment. And I know that the results are indeed extraordinary. So my challenge to you is to try this out. Introduce this practice of reflection and see if it makes a difference to you. It'd be great if you can share it using the hashtag Kata Microlearning on Twitter, LinkedIn or Instagram. I'll find you if you do, because I follow all of those. And if you'd like a copy of my coaching record template, you can find it on my website on the resources page. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to hearing if this practice makes a difference to you. And I'd really love it for today's session, if you could record your microlearnings on that mural board for everyone to see. Thank you. Thank you, Tracy.